May I have your Lordship's permission to commence the proceedings of the court?
Mr. Attorney General. Honorable the Chief Justice of India, Honorable Judges of the Supreme Court, the Solicitor General of India, Additional Solicitor General, President and Office Bearer of the Supreme Court Bar Association, Office Bearer of the Supreme Court Advocates and Record Association, members of the bar, my dear friends at the bar. While liberty may lie in the hearts of all humans, it must also be secure to all under all times. Resilient social norms and constitutional orders must also remain intact in the midst of waves of social and political misadventures. Constitutional architects who can dig deep and wide enough and who can transcend partisan ideological demands of political party affiliations and stand by those values occupy that sphere of liberty architects. Mr. Fali Nariman was one such architect. When he gathered to pay homage to such giants, who have not only enriched our jurisprudence, stood as an icon and taught the highest values of the profession, but also showed us the courage and conviction to stand by values in other public callings, we find it difficult to gather our chronicles about them and compress them. Talk of the march of Indian constitutional law without reference to Mr. Fali Nariman would be like marching with a flagpole without the flag. It's customary to set out biographical details, the outstanding ones, to fill the homage pages. What is difficult in connecting the life dots and his contribution is the vastness of his life canvas. I have endeavored to capture a few remarkable and unique contributions made by Mr. Nariman and to invoke our own commitments to such causes, subjects, and values. The stories of the world of arbitration, both international and national, cannot be written fully without mapping the roles played and responsibilities undertaken by him. Ambassador Venu Rajamani, in his message penned a few years ago for the book on international arbitration in honor of Mr. Nariman, said that, for us in India, 91-year-old Fali is a national treasure. And he paid rich encomiums to the range of his contributions, and particularly about his work in the Kishan Ganga international arbitration administered by the PCA. Chief Justice Chandrachud, writing in the same volume, said, countless efforts have rested easy on Mr. Nariman's shoulders. And admiringly spoke about the notable contributions made by him to the world of arbitration. In the 10th annual Goff lecture, by Nariman, he critiqued what he called the mills of arbitration and cautioned against the transformation of arbitration into international disputology. The insights he gathered from his engagement in the international arbitration scene over a period and their encapsulation in several writings from 2003 to 2020 has given us a rich and coherent jurisprudence of the arbitration world. Mr. Brooks V. Daly, writing the same volume, fondly talks about the long and fruitful relationship between the permanent core of arbitration and Mr. Nariman. The pages of Indian constitutional law are copiously filled by his numerous engagements in cases of perennial significance. But one case that has rendered invaluable support for invocation of international law to be embedded in domestic law is the Vishaka principle. His articulations Vishaka are now an integral part of public law. He remained the president of the Bar Association of India for more than 2 decades. He wrote regularly for the Indian Advocate, the Journal of the Bar Association of India. The range of his pieces capture the width of his understanding and the unfading commitment to rule of law and human rights. Mr. Nariman was active and alive to political and legal developments till he breathed his last. Nariman rose in the recent electoral bond judgment, I quote, I am particularly impressed by that a five-judge bench has held in no uncertain terms that manifest arbitrariness is enacted now now as an integral part of Article 14. I do hope that this will enable the Supreme Court at some point in the future to strike down the no bail for now provision in the recently enacted laws. This was his youthful reaction to current events. In his autobiography, Before Memory Fades, Nariman recounted why he returned his brief to the Gujarat government in the Narmada rehabilitation case. The abhorrence he must have had against the emergency and its perils must have persuaded him to do so, troubled by his conscience against any injustice. Mr. Nariman, like Mr. V.R. Justice Krishnaya, used to say that he is a Nehruvian. The book he strongly recommended always was Jawaharlal Nehru's book, Discovery of India. This was his sharing his identity with Justice Krishnaya. Relying on this book, he commented that acceptance of all diversity is the sole ideology that could hold India together. According to Mr. Nariman, whatever the source from which minority derives its existence, religious, ethnic, or linguistic, the rest of society has to make a conscious effort in coming to terms with it. But the fact of life is that the larger the majority community with greater political power, the lesser the inclination to make efforts to build bridges, unquote. Civil liberties, fundamental rights, free speech, press freedom, cultural and educational rights of religious and linguistic minorities, the right to property, among others, were all dear to his heart. They were so dear to him that he always wrote and talked about all of them. Being a foremost lawyer in a corporate matters, as in any other field, Mr. Nariman was a natural choice to represent Union Carbide Corporation in the Bhopal gas tragedy case. Professor Bakshi spoke against Mr. Nariman for his role in the Union Carbide case. Bakshi's critical letter and his reply to her faithfully published by Mr. Nariman in his autobiography, in a later interview with Karan Thapa, he expressed regret for his decision to appear for the Union Carbide Corporation. How many of us are made of such metal? He declined judicialship. The loss to judiciary, however, became a gain to the parliament much later. Presidents ranging from R. Venkatraman, K.R. Narayanan, Dr. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam consulted him on important constitutional issues. His report of the long line of public figures who took consultation with Mr. Nariman as a persuasive element included former Prime Minister Vajpayee, Deputy Prime Minister Advani, Lok Sabha Speaker Somnath Chatterjee, Dr. P.C. Alexander, Dr. Karan Singh, and many members of parliament from different political parties who admired the juris in Mr. Nariman. In one of his speeches to parliamentarians, Mr. Nariman elaborated on one of his favorite judgments, and that was judgment by Justice Chinnapareddy Bijoy Emmanuel. He said, "Our tradition teaches tolerance, our philosophy teaches tolerance, our constitution teaches tolerance, let us not dilute it." Fali said, extolling the parliamentarian to make it a policy of the nation. In 1999, when Prime Minister Vajpayee had recommended to President K.R. Narayanan the name of Fali Nariman for being nominated under the President's discretion to Rajya Sabha, it is said that the tough former diplomat Brijesh Mishra, Principal Secretary of the Prime Minister, barely suppressed happiness to convey the glad tidings. I think the President will be pleased with the name. It will set the credit of the Prime Minister and his advisors, but most of all, the credit of Mr. Nariman, stature. No one thought the renowned jurist and the quondam additional Solicitor General of India would, as a member of Parliament, be soft on the ruling establishment or somehow got co-opted by it. The thought simply did not occur to anyone. And that is what called independence, and that's what called autonomy, as somebody says. Nominated MPs get very little speaking time, but some people impact their surrounding by their mere presence. Nariman did that in the Supreme Court and in the upper house of Indian Parliament. On January 27, 2000, President Narayanan, while addressing members of Parliament on the occasion of 50th anniversary of the Republic of India, said, quote, "When there is so much talk about revising the Constitution or even writing a new Constitution, we have to consider whether the Constitution that has failed us or whether we have failed the Constitution." Unquote. From the galleries, I noticed Mr. Nariman erupt in delighted applause, thumping the desk in front of him with the central hall resounding with the approbation. And as he was on my way out, he came up to me and said, "Brilliant, brilliant, our president is brilliant." Mr. Nariman, being in Parliament, was akin to a conscience keeper, being in the atrium of India's legislative genius. He represented the Constitution's foundation objectives, his driving force, which was about rights and duties woven into the resplendent short silk of democratic republicanism. During his 6 years as a parliamentarian, the world moved from the 20th century to the 21st, and Mr. Nariman moved from spending time at the bar and before the bench to the red carpeted and maroon upholstered chambers of Parliament. He introduced 4 private member bills in the Rajya Sabha, namely the Disruption of Proceedings of Parliament Bill 2004, the Judicial Statistics Bill 2004, the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2004 to amend Articles 217 and 224, and the Representation of People Amendment Bill 2004. He said he received assurance from the government that it would look into matters and 4 questions raised by him relating to budget allocation for elderly persons, prohibition of contract labor, village public telephones, and a general issue relating to Central Vigilance Commission Bill 2003. Some of them have become legislative enactments now. In a country like India, so diverse, so variegated, there is another side to every other side as well, inside every inside. And so be just as one can be, but you will always steal someone out of justice. Mr. Nariman knew this. Nariman called attention to motions related to the grave situation in Maharashtra due to unprecedented rain and the hike in petrol and diesel price in August 2005. His special mention in Rajya Sabha helped maintain educational autonomy in universities. He also introduced the report of the Committee of Privilege to the Rajya Sabha on December 18, 2000. He has participated in debates on many government legislation and took interest in the lawmaking process. In Mr. Nariman's death, India has lost its tallest spokesman for honesty in public intent and private conduct, probity in public service and private enterprise, and simple decency in public dealing and private equation. He was free of all sanctimony, all pomposity. The brightness of his professional life was so blinding that to miss taking adequate notice of his parliamentary life. He will be failing in our duty if we do not stop and reflect on the life and works of Mr. Nariman as a parliamentarian par excellence. The Indian Parliament is richer today due to its debates, its interventions, and time can never erode the pillars of strength that Mr. Nariman has added to the edifice of Parliament and parliamentary democracy. He led a full life. He has given unto us a great gift in Justice Rohinton Nariman, who has his credit a remarkable professional career and outstanding judicial contribution. Just a few days before Mr. Nariman laid his physical frame to rest, I was with him, had a warm and delightful exchange of views, and little did I knew that I will see him not again. I have several fond memories of my interactions with him, and they will all remain my treasure chest. May his soul rest in divine grace.
Honorable Dr. Chief Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, Chief Justice of India, other Honorable Judges of Supreme Court, learned Attorney General for India, Mr. R. Venkatramani, learned Solicitor General for India, Mr. Tushar Mehta, family members of late Mr. Fali S. Nariman, including his noble son, Honorable Mr. Justice Rohinton Fali Nariman, who served as Supreme Court Judge and Solicitor General for India, learned Additional Solicitor General of India, including Mr. Vikramjit Banerjee, Aishwarya Bhatti, and former Additional Solicitor General Mr. C.S. Vaidyanathan and Mr. Vishwajit Bhattacharya, former President of Supreme Court Bar Association Mr. Dushyant Dave, and present Vice President Mr. Sukumar Patjoshi, Honorary Secretary Mr. Rohit Pandey, Joint Secretary Mr. Manish Kumar Dubey, Treasurer Yogendra Pawar Jha, Joint Treasurer Mr. Amarendra Kumar Singh, and other distinguished office bearers and members of Supreme Court Bar Association, President Mr. Manoj Kumar Mishra, Vice President Sanyasis Mukherjee, Honorary Secretary Devar, Joint Secretary Ms. Rasmi Malhotra, Treasurer Mr. Puneet Singh Bindra, and Joint Treasurer Mr. Sachin Sharma, and other distinguished office bearers and members of Supreme Court Advocate on Record Association, officers of Registry of Supreme Court, including Secretary General Mr. Atul M. Korhekar, distinguished media persons, my brothers and sisters in legal profession. We have gathered here to pay homage to our most distinguished legal luminary and pure soul, late Mr. Fali S. Nariman, Doyen of the Bar, who passed away in New Delhi on February 21, 23 at the age of 95. In his loss, a void is created among the legal fraternity worldwide. He was a jurist par excellence and a champion of human rights, and he made an indelible imprint in the legal profession. Mr. Fali Nariman started the general practice of law in 1950. Soon, Mr. Nariman built up a large and lucrative practice, particularly in commercial law and civil law. Indeed, he dominated the commercial code. He assisted both Mr. Ashok Sen and Mr. Nani Palkiwala in Golaknath case. Mr. Nariman was offered a High Court judgeship in 1996, though he was only 37 years old. and as required in those days, it had the express approval of the Honorable Chief Justice of India, but he respectfully declined that offer. His appearance in an election case for Mr. H.R. Gokhale, later Union Law Minister, felicitated his first independent appearance in the Supreme Court, and he shifted his practice to the Supreme Court. He was designated as senior advocate in 1971. In 1972, Mr. Nariman was appointed additional Solicitor General of India. As a champion of human rights, he resigned as additional Solicitor General of India when emergency was imposed in June 1975. Thereafter, for over half a century, he practiced continuously in the Supreme Court of India and appeared in hundreds of leading cases which bear testimony to his contributions to the growth of law. Mr. Nariman had served as Vice President and President of Law Asia. Mr. Nariman was honored with the Padmabhushan in 2007 and Padmabhushan in 1991 by Government of India. He has been a mentor to Bar Association of India. He was a nominated member of Rajya Sabha from 1999 to 2005. His advocacy and lucid arguments before the judges are worthy of emulation, particularly by the younger members of the bar. He has inspired generations and has made them believe that one can fulfill every dream with hard work and sincerity. Being the president of Supreme Court Bar Association, I offer condolences to his family and respectfully pay homage to him. Jai Bharat.
My esteemed colleagues, Mr. R. Venkatramani, the Learned Attorney General for India, Mr. Tushar Mehta, Learned Solicitor General, and law officers, presidents of the SCBA and SCORA, distinguished members of the bar, members of Mr. Nariman's family, and part of our own extended family, Justice Rohinton Nariman, Sanaya, Neena, Khurshid, Rohan, Mr. Subhash Sharma, who was not just a junior for Mr. Nariman, but a part of the family, and members of the registry. So much has been said about Mr. Fali Nariman. Accolades and tributes have been showered in rich abundance to his memory. So much yet remains to be said. The universe of infinity, or the infinity of the universe, whichever way we perceive it, defies prose and verse. The values which Fali Nariman embodied, unflinching ethics, indomitable courage, and an unwavering pursuit of principle, provide a balm to the soul, not just to the profession, but to our nation. In the Iliad, Homer compares people to leaves, noting that in the winter they are blown to the earth, and as spring comes again, the budding wood grows once more, causing Homer to state, and so with men, one generation grows, another dies away. But some names remain. Our nation has been blessed with several talented legal minds both before and after we gained independence. But every now and then, a lawyer transcends advocacy to become a leader and pillar of the community. They do so first and foremost through their outstanding legal acumen and incredible work ethic. These foundational attributes are buttressed by subtler but equally important qualities, such as a keen understanding of a lawyer's role in our nation's socio-legal fabric, their integrity and courage in the face of injustice, and perhaps most of all, their compassion and willingness to help others. Through their actions, the cases they argue, their written work, and the positions they hold, entire eras of the legal profession come to be associated with their presence. Mr. Nariman was unquestionably a symbol of all this and more. While Mr. Fali Nariman's contribution to the Indian legal profession was the result of his hard work, his very presence in India was the result of unforeseen events, or as some would say, fate. Born on 10 January 1929 in the territory that was then Burma, it was the Japanese invasion of the Indo-Pacific that caused Miss Nariman's family to migrate to India. The arduous trek in the face of incessant bombing instilled steel in the young child, who, by his own admission, had until then a rather devoted upbringing. He completed his secondary education at the Bishop Cotton School in Shimla and secured a degree in history from St. Xavier's College in Mumbai. At the Government Law College in Bombay, he was instructed by several practicing members of the Bombay Bar, including Nani Palkiwala, Yashwant Chandrachud, and Jal Vimadalal. He was, and with the benefit of hindsight, perhaps unsurprisingly, an outstanding student who was always amongst the top of his class, securing the Kinloch Forbes Gold Medal in Roman Law and Jurisprudence, and standing first in the advocate's examination conducted by the Bar Council. The early years of Mr. Nariman's career were spent, like many of us, carefully observing and assisting senior counsel. He joined the chamber of Sir Jamshedji Kanga in Bombay. The chamber had a veritable assembly line of brilliant juniors, including Marzban Mistri, Rustam Kola, Hormazji Sirvai, Tharseji Bhaba, Soli Sorabji, Jal Vimadalal, and Nani Palkiwala. Fali Nariman's presence rested easy amongst his peers. He excelled, arguing case after case before distinguished judges, M.C. Chagla, P.B. Gajendra Gadkar, who would be later elevated to the Supreme Court and ultimately hold the position of the Chief Justice of India, S.R. Tendolkar, and J.C. Shah, to name a few. Mr. Nariman always insisted that the more work you'd have, the sharper are your mental faculties. Living by this principle, after a full week arguing in the Bombay High Court, Mr. Nariman often used to travel to Pune to practice in the district court, honing his skills in the art of trial advocacy. Though drawn from the original side, he had no air of superiority or condescension. The phrase, all roads lead to Rome, can aptly be modified for a great many Indian lawyers to say all roads lead to Delhi. And so it was with Mr. Nariman. Despite his long-standing loyalty to the Bombay Bar, he was gradually pulled in by the gravitational force of this court, which is the ultimate arbiter of constitutional disputes, and the nation was better off for it. While still practicing in Bombay, he began appearing at the Supreme Court, most notably assisting both Ashok Sen and Nani Palkiwala as he argued the landmark case of Golaknath versus State of Punjab before the 9 judges of this court in 1967. In 1971, he was designated a senior counsel in the Supreme Court. In 1972, he was appointed Additional Solicitor General of India at a time when the Union of India had only 3 law officers, the Attorney General of India, the Solicitor General, and Mr. Nariman, the Additional Solicitor General of India. As Nariman says in his book, Before Memory Fades, a foreigner in Delhi has to establish himself both in integrity and ability. Only then will the Supreme Court bar accept them as one of their own. But once they do so, its members are the most affectionate and loyal of all comrades. Our bar would submit to a decree on admission when I say that Mr. Nariman passed this test with flying colors. He represented the Union of India in this court and at various other fora during his tenure as ASG. He argued seminal cases such as Bennett Coleman versus Union of India. He was a spirited representative of India at international events such as the conferences of Law Asia and the International Law Association. An embodiment of the generous cultured traditions of the Parsi Zoroastrians, he and his gracious spouse Bapsi were full of mirth. They were joyous and spread joy around, complemented in good measure by dhansak and a good tipple. Fali possessed an unending compendium of stories about yesteryear. Bapsi and Fali were never short of his generous chuckle and the glint in the eye. With the imposition of the internal emergency in June 1975, Fali Nariman resigned as Additional Solicitor General. As Martin Luther King once mused, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? Mr. Nariman was guided by only one question, the last, is it right? In his later years, Mr. Nariman often described how in the days following his resignation as Additional Solicitor General, visitors to his house dried up to a trickle. However, his continued accomplishments at the Supreme Court are a testament not only to his enduring legal prowess that saw him through turbulent times, but also to that finest tradition of the bar in rising above the disagreements of the day, to unfailingly serve their clients, assist the court, and work towards our nation's betterment. Despite appearing for countless clients of various and diverse backgrounds, creeds, and political dispensations, Mr. Nariman always recognized that his highest duty was to the court and the Constitution. In Air India versus Nargesh Mirza, Mr. Nariman was tasked with defending the national carrier's policy of compelling air hostesses to retire upon their first pregnancy. Recognizing the incongruity between Air India's policy and the prohibition on sex discrimination found in Articles 14 and 15 of the Constitution, Mr. Nariman did not unthinkingly defend the policy, but instead impressed on Air India the need to amend their ways. As Justice Syed Murtaza Fazal Ali recorded in the case, in fact, he says, as a very fair and conscientious counsel, Mr. Nariman realized the inherent weakness and the apparent absurdity of the aforesaid impugned provision. And in the course of his arguments, he stated that he had been able to persuade the management of Air India to amend the rules so as to delete first pregnancy as a ground for termination of the service. The ultimate test of a moral person is their willingness to raise a voice for justice, even when it means rocking the boat. In this case, as he would say, the aircraft. And Mr. Nariman was always willing to speak for what was right and just. Mr. Nariman's distinguished career continued throughout the remainder of the 20th century and into the 21st. His arguments in key cases influenced the very foundations of constitutional and public law, such as his noteworthy contributions to the second, third, and fourth judges' cases on judicial appointments in 1993, 1998, and 2014. His client, as he would say, was the independence of the judiciary. He argued cases on the rights of minority educational institutions under Article 30 of the Constitution, culminating in the seminal TMA Pai Foundation versus the state of Karnataka decision. Away from Delhi, he was also a seasoned lawyer before various tribunals established under the Interstate River Water Disputes Act 1956, representing the state of Karnataka for over 30 years in the Kaveri water sharing dispute. Our time here is too brief to recount even a fraction of his noteworthy arguments in our courts, but I would be remiss to not mention the arguments he advanced in Suresh Kumar Kaushal versus Naz Foundation. Mr. Nariman argued that Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code cannot criminalize sexual acts between consenting adults and urged the court to change with the times. Despite the court upholding the provision, the passage of time and the eventual overruling of Suresh Kaushal in Navtej Singh Johar has since vindicated Mr. Nariman's argument and his constitutional vision of equality and dignity. The hallmark of a great lawyer is not one who wins, but one who fights well, and in doing so furthers the judge's own understanding of the issues. Mr. Nariman was truly amongst the very best. Lawyers are often likened to soldiers, engaged in gladiatorial combat before the bench. But in his own tribute to Motilal Setalvad, Mr. Nariman distinguished between soldiers and grand old lawyers, noting, old soldiers never die, they only fade away. Grand old men only die, but they never fade away. Words that have a particular resonance as we are gathered here this morning. Mr. Nariman's contribution to the legal profession transcended the court. He was the president of the Bar Association of India from 1991 to 2010 and a member of the International Commission of Jurists from 1995 to 1998. He served as a vice chairperson of the Court of Arbitration of the International Chamber of Commerce and as a member of the London Court of International Arbitration. Public law became a part of his flesh and blood, but he was at heart a quintessential lawyer who had found his moorings in commercial law. Arbitration was close to his heart. Conferences of the Permanent Court of Arbitration were never complete without his presence. In 1991, he was awarded the Padmabhushan, and in 2017, the Padmabhushan. In his time, he also served as a nominated member of the Rajya Sabha from 1999 to 2005, which the learned Attorney General has recounted. Despite scaling these incredible heights, Nariman always maintained that greatness and modesty go hand in hand. He was a man truly in the mold of his mentor, Sir Jamshedji Kanga, who famously, even at the age of 92, always insisted, I am still learning. Even after retiring from active practice, He authored numerous articles and books that have inspired countless lawyers, the most recent of which, titled You Must Know Your Constitution, was published a few months ago. By writing opinion pieces in newspapers on complex legal issues and constitutional doctrine, Mr. Fali Nariman tried to ensure that legal discourse is not limited to lawyers and judges and reaches the wide spectrum of society. A few months ago, I had written to Mr. Nariman requesting him to contribute an essay to a volume on 75 years of the Supreme Court that we will be publishing in a few months. At about noon on the day before his passing, we received an email with his essay with a gracious hand-signed note. I'm also reliably informed that right until the night before his passing, he was meticulously settling the draft of a written submission for an upcoming Constitution bench hearing on arbitration law. His mental agility, dedication to his work, and commitment to the law remained uncompromised till the day he finally rested. Mr. Nariman's life and career before our courts lived up to the highest ideals of the legal profession. No matter the client, the government, or the case, Mr. Nariman sought to advance a vision of the law grounded in liberty, equality, and justice, the foundational values of our Constitution, and ultimately our society. No matter the occasion or the opponent, he conducted himself with grace and poise. As recently as in 2022, he wrote for the Indian Express that a futuristic court is not just one that is technology enabled, but also that which is independent. He wrote, first and foremost, the judiciary as an institution needs to preserve its independence. And to do this, it must strive to maintain the confidence of the public in the established courts. The independence of judges is best safeguarded by the judges themselves through institutions and organizations that the law empowers them to set up. Mr. Fali Nariman's life straddled time and roles of personality. He embodied the fierce and unwavering commitment to the rule of law, which has defined the position of our bar after 1947. As an inveterate lawyer, Fali Nariman was that and more. He was a mentor to many on the bar and the bench. He had perfected the fading art of letter writing. He would share an article or eagerly inquire about areas of emerging interest like technology, in which he was a self-confessed beginner. While he was not one to mince words on a judgment he disagreed with, he was equally the fond and generous senior. A day before his passing, I received a letter from him on a recent judgment of the Constitution bench. Mr. Nariman fought many battles. Some of these battles continue needing to be fought. He narrated a story involving a conversation between two distinguished lawyers in our bar library during the course of the emergency. One was drawing puffs on his pipe. The first of the two lawyers said to the other, Tame bolo, you speak. The other said, Tame bolo, you speak. When many voices fell silent during difficult times, Nariman's resounding baritone resonated in the walls of the court and beyond. His voice represented the conscience of the nation. In the end, it was not Mr. Nariman who gave up on these battles. It was only his body. His soul will live on in the many lives he touched and the thousands more he inspired, and his memory will always serve as a guiding light for those who pursue justice in these halls. May I request you all to stand up and observe 2 minutes silence in memory of late Shri Fali S. Nariman, Senior. The court will sit for normal work at 11:30 a.m.
I have your lordship's permission to conclude the proceedings of the court.